I think, and I like the question about Wanda Dallas, because that's who I am. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter if you are a judge, an attorney, a person who is in a position of power in this county. Take all that away. Become a normal, regular citizen. What is the best thing you can give to your county because of not what you do, not what title you hide behind or refer to yourself to, but who are you? Strip all of that away. Who are you? And what do you want to leave behind for your children and your children's children? I was born in Springfield, Massachusetts. It's cold. And anyone who knows me knows I do not like being cold. My family, all of my family is from the South. And so I had the best of both worlds in a sense. I had that strong family foundation that comes from the South, that comes from being very family-oriented and collective. My mother had a lot of things going on in her own life. She was challenged in some areas, and I learned that from a young child, I learned that I had to depend on myself in some levels, in some areas, that I had to be strong enough to hold up a lot of people in my life. And so from a young child, I learned how strong I actually was. I didn't want to be depended on, but I had to be. I was dependent on from the time I was probably 6 or 7 years old. There was a lot of things that happened to my mom and because of my mom, and I had to be strong enough to hold her up on some levels. And so it left me with this sense of how people can be challenged. And so I've always been the nurturer. I've always been the person to hold other people up. And that's not a lesson that I looked for. It's just something that I had to learn how to handle. I was an interesting child. I was a very introverted, shy, awkward child. And growing up in Massachusetts, I always loved books. I always loved education. And so I loved the libraries. There was a lot of dysfunction going on at home. And so the library became my place of refuge. It became the place where I could read the books and I could escape into a book and I could create a world for myself that I wasn't really, that I didn't have. My friends, they said, "What do you want to do today?" I was like, "Let's go to the library." Because we had a lot of college campuses around us. So my idea of a fun Saturday was to go into the library on a college campus and see how long it took them to put us out. That was what I said. And they were always like, because I was always coming up with ideas and let's do this. You know, I always had things, but my favorite thing to do was to go into the library. And so this one particular Saturday, I was at one of the colleges, and it was actually Western New England College, and they had a law school. And I had ridden my bike over there, and I said, okay, let's go into the library. And I found myself in the section of books that dealt with the law. I worked my way over to the law section, and I saw the Constitution, and I saw these really old books. And I remember opening the books and not understanding a word. And I thought to myself, I will never open another book that I can't understand. And that became to me the most difficult book to master, to understand. And when I was 11 years old, I said, I'm going to law school. And that's how that idea was born in me. When I started practicing law, I was a law clerk to a judge. And so from the very first job I had, I was kind of put into a position where I had to deal with the court. And it's ironic because in law school, the one thing I didn't think I was going to do is be involved with trials. I really wanted to be the researcher. I saw myself as a person sitting back in the back row, doing the research, writing the briefs, and giving it to someone else to handle. I didn't think that I would ever be the trial attorney. And so within probably the first year of me graduating from law school, I became an assistant solicitor general. and I started prosecuting misdemeanor cases. And it's funny because I just was volunteering. And so what I tell young people is this: you never know where your opportunity is going to come from. I was volunteering, and within about a week or two, my boss said, well, we have a position, we want to hire you. And I was like, no, I'll continue to volunteer. Now at that point, we had 4 young children, and my husband was working, and she said, well, let's do this then. Go home, tell your husband I offered you a paying job, and then come back and tell me whether or not you still want to volunteer. Well, let's just say I became a paid employee the very next day. And it was great. It was a really good, because almost immediately I started prosecuting jury trials. I started prosecuting the DUIs, the vehicular homicides, hit and runs, the misdemeanor traffic violations, and just I found my voice. I think I found something that I could relate to. And I was real shy and I was real quiet, but somehow or another, when it was time to pick the jury, I found that this is something I can do, because it was like talking to people and just telling people, here's what we have. And I used to look at this as putting together a production, the opening statement, your direct examination, your cross-exam, your closing argument. It was all pieces to this production, and it just required a lot of planning, a lot of thought, a lot of energy, a lot of research, and everything I enjoyed doing came together in this place. What I realized is the history that I have with Clayton County started in Riverdale. So in 2003, I had worked with the chief of police, Thaddeus Knox. I'd worked with her in the city of Atlanta, and she was now chief of police for Riverdale. And we talked about this, and she said, I need a judge to do the municipal court. And I said, that'd be great. I was so excited. I couldn't believe it. And it was traffic. So that goes back to my first job as an assistant solicitor, is now I'm the judge sitting in on the traffic violations. I think with that first position, I realized that you do this with a certain amount of grace. It was a good place to start as a judge. It was a part-time position, and so I didn't have to leave. At that point, I was working for the Fulton County DA's office. And so this was just a part-time position in the city of Riverdale. And some of the same people that I worked with back then, I see them now. So it was kind of neat. Full circle, life is. I had been working as a senior assistant district attorney for the Fulton County DA's office. And in 2001, I was ready to not work there anymore. I just had my baby, the 5th baby actually, and she was really young. And see, the first 4, I had stayed home with them, so I was struggling with this child not having me at home. And I approached Paul Howard. I said, I think I'm going to quit. So he says to me, I have an idea. He said, there's a program that I've heard about, and I want you to look at this program and see whether or not this is something that you see yourself doing. So okay. So I started researching community prosecution, and I realized that this is who I am. You see, they used to call me the social worker DA, because when people came in my courtroom, I was always looking for a way to help them heal. So if someone came into my courtroom and they're accused of whatever infraction or crime, what can I do so that this person is whole? I mean, I took this very seriously. I didn't want to prosecute everyone and have everyone go to jail, prison, but I wanted to use that position to be the place that people could come through that realize this is not the life that I envisioned for myself, and what else can I do? So when I looked at community prosecution, this was perfect for me. It was an opportunity to help the community heal, to take the members in community that were not whole necessarily, or what had created some type of, a challenge to the healthiness of the community, make them whole and put them back into the community. Because the only way that we can grow as a community is if we focus on those parts of ourselves that are not healthy and help them to get healthy. Instead of throwing them out or pulling them out of the community, let's pull together and help them fit. Give them an opportunity at least to fit. And that's kind of like the idea of community prosecution. There was one family on the street who the woman's sons were selling crack cocaine. And it came to our attention that this was going on, and I started researching how do you go about closing a crack house. It was very interesting. The whole idea of the house being the defendant on some level. It involved or required me to go and talk to the family of the community and the neighbors. And so I talked to the neighbors and I said, all right, here's what we see. What can we do? What I learned then is, what do you want us to do? Was my question. And because I formed the question that way, the issue became our issue, the DA's office. If you come in to save the day, if it doesn't work, it's your fault. And if it works, it's your fault. So either way, there's a lose-lose. Versus, we understand that you're telling us that you have a problem. What is your problem, and what can we do to help you with your problem? So now, if it fails, and I don't like failure, but if it's not successful, then the problem still, I don't want to say it belongs to the community, but we gave our best effort at this. So there's no loser there. But if there's a success, it's the community's success. And now the community is stronger and they're empowered to take responsibility for the success of and the wholeness and healthiness of their own community. At one point, I really didn't want to practice law anymore. At one point, I just wanted to move into something else. At one point, after my mother passed, there was a lot that was going on that I just wasn't sure. Clayton County was my first place as a judge years ago. And I had taken some hits in my life toward the end of 2009 and through 2011, and I needed to heal. So I moved into Clayton County in 2008 is when I came here, and I came to heal. I came because I needed a place where I could just sit back and rest. And I noticed that while I was here, there were so many ideas I had. I would watch. I lived in Riverdale. This process of getting to this position started again in Riverdale, Georgia, which is an amazing city because there's so much in Riverdale. There are hidden treasures in Clayton County that people just don't know about. And when I got here to heal, I started looking around, and I've never taken it for granted where I am, And it just brought, all roads led to Clayton County Magistrate Court. I was not looking for that position. I did not think that I was going to be a judge again. And I have to say hopefully I can say God, because I bite my tongue a lot, but it's all God. Because everything that happened seemed to point toward this position. The people that I met that told me about the position, I wasn't looking for this position. I ran across someone who said, oh, you need to check this out. From that day on, everything that happened to me meant that this was something that it was meant that God had brought me to. And that's how I got here. And so once he brings you to a place, he expects you to do something in that place. I don't think people really knew what there was and what there is in Clayton County. I think that people are so focused on Fulton County that we kind of get lost a little bit in the glare and the glitz of Fulton County. But there's so much to offer here. There's so much to do here. There are people here that have lived here all of their lives and that have invested the best of themselves in this county. There's an honesty here. There's an honesty here in Clayton County. This is simply who we are. Do you understand? Some places, some people are pretentious and they want you to think that they think they're all of that. But then there are the people and the places that are just who we are. We're like the workers that we make things happen. We don't look around to see who's watching us. We just do what we do because it's the right thing to do. So that honesty, that transparency is who we are here in Clayton County. And so what happens is you don't go in and say, I'm the best thing to happen to the county. You go in and say, what? What can I do to help? You see, that same life lesson. What can I do to help? What can I do to make this county great? And I ask that question when I go to meetings. I listen for that answer when I talk to young people, and I try to get people to see the best of you is only in what you think the situation requires of you, not what you can give to the situation. That's always been my first goal, is to build a relationship with young people, to change the character and the personality of a place is to empower, to educate, to motivate the young people. Because if they're not motivated, if they're not empowered, if they're not encouraged, they will take the best of them, will leave, and they'll take all of their education, they'll take all of their promise, and they'll put it somewhere else. So we've got to create a place where they come home or they stay in Clayton County because their ideas, their passion, their dreams find a place here in our county. Because I think what's happening is we tend to throw away the young people that are the challenge, but the young people that are most challenged are the ones that have the most promise. That's what I found. The ones that are acting up and creating a lot of havoc is because they need the attention. We don't need to throw them away. We need to find out where they fit. That's the first step to creating a healthy county, is to keep our young people encouraged and to find the best in them and to bring that out of them. They may not have come in my court, although sometimes they have come into my courtroom, and I pay attention to the young people. And when I see them and I ask them, what is it that you want to say? Because I want to make sure that I know what you want so I can fit that. You understand? Again, that goes right back to what I was saying. We have to ask the right questions. We have to ask a question that imputes the responsibility of your direction on yourself. What is it we can do to help you? And I say more when I go to the schools and I talk to young people, and I'll give them my card. But just depending on where I am and the young people I'm talking to, I'll share a little bit more personal parts of my life, and they're always amazed. And they'll say, something like that happened to me. Thank you so much for letting me know that I can go from where I am to where you are. So when young people know that your life wasn't as easy as it looks, then they trust you. And that's something that's so important to me, and that's the biggest compliment that I can get back from a young person, is that they trust me. There's so much potential in this county. There is so much potential. But I'll tell you how I defined potential. Potential is what someone sees in you that you don't see in yourself. So we've got to see how great we are. We've got to see how much we have to offer, how many people are here from all different places, people that were born and raised here, and people that chose to come here. We've got to work together, and we've got to make this county great, because there's so much potential here, and we have to see the potential that we have, because there are a lot of people that are waiting for us. They're waiting to invest in us. So we have to let them know we're ready, we're willing, we're able. Period. Pride comes from taking care of your community. Pride comes from making sure your schools, that you partner with your school, not just because you have a child in the school, but because someone else's child may need a mother or a father in the school. Pride comes from, I'm not going to make that decision. I'm not going to steal from that store. Because now you're taking away people that want to invest in our county, because if you're stealing from stores, they're not going to stay here. Pride comes from doing a little bit more to help your neighbor who may not be able to do it for themselves. That's the pride you have in a county, is we have to collectively work toward making our county shine. Because the broken windows theory is, if someone comes to your community, the grass is not cut, cars all over the place, windows broken everywhere in there, no one's going to want to invest. We have to treat our county the way we want other people to see it. And if we treat it that way for ourselves, because we have pride in who we are and in where we live, other people will see that pride shining through. That's what we've got to do and continue to do.